Welcome to SUSECON Digital 2020. We have a special guest with us today, Marc O'Regan from Dell. Marc, welcome.
Hi, Thomas. How are you?
Good. So let me start with that. Could you tell us a little bit about the partnership between Dell and SUSE and what makes it that strong?
Yeah, absolutely. Our partnership with SUSE is a very strategic partnership, and it's one that's extraordinarily close to Dell Tech. It goes back well over a decade and a half, where we have been collaborating and in some cases nearly co-engineering a lot of architectures, a lot of platforms together. So we go back, 16, 17 years, we can look to Dell Technologies and SUSE doing a lot of innovation on, Dell PowerEdge server range, and bringing SUSE Enterprise onto that Dell Technologies architecture. And that's been really, really good for us, and we believe really, really good for SUSE as well. The partnership has just accelerated, over time. Some of the biggest platforms, in the wider communities are sitting on Dell Technologies, Dell EMC engineering, and SUSE Technologies. As we started to mature that relationship, we've seen, during my time, I guess, as CTO, I've seen some really cool innovation. I remember us doing a collaboration with Fluid Cache technology. So our Fluid Cache technology, which was sitting in on top of the SUSE Enterprise server, but also the storage sitting in underneath that. We saw that kind of architecture solving really, really essential problems. So if you think of an OLTP type of an environment, Dell.com, for instance, you're getting a hell of a lot of hits, and you have to support that kind of environment. This is extraordinarily important to us as an organization to be able to actually hold an environment like that up, make sure that it's secure, make sure that it's stable, and working with SUSE, we're able to build the type of engineering underneath that platform to be able to support it. So not only are we getting stability, but when the platform needs to scale, it's an extraordinarily easy platform to scale because it's built, through a distributed architecture. So our relationship and our partnership with SUSE is really, really important to help us build those architectures and then take the learnings from those architectures and move that from, a Dell Tech SUSE kind of effort into industry. So we're taking a lot of what we learned, there.
Yeah, and I was thinking about like scalability and stability. They are key aspects of our joint co-innovation. I was also thinking about performances and memory management, and specifically one of the workloads that is very key for SUSE and for Dell, the SAP workloads. And I know we've been teaming up in that area as well, and to benefit from our joint technologies and bring the solution to market. Can you tell us a bit about your view about that?
Yeah, hugely strategic partnership, three-way partnership between Dell Technologies, SUSE, and SAP. And again, goes back a long, long way. I mean, I think our relationship with SAP goes back as far as 20, 21 years. Look, when we look at the type of customers that we're addressing in that market, it's an utterly essential market where we can actually take technologies that can range from a small type of an architecture where you're taking SUSE technology, SAP technology, and Dell EMC technology onto as tight as one compute server node, and innovate at that level, right up to some of the biggest ERP platforms worldwide sitting on those types of technologies. So when we look at that kind of architecture, when you look at Dell EMC, SAP, SUSE, and you look at the performance, and performance is always going, you mentioned memory, right? When you're thinking about, response times, when you're thinking about things like, read-write commits, scalability, you've got to get the architecture underneath you correct. You absolutely have to get the architecture underneath you correct. You look at all of the SAP benchmarks themselves. We're all topping the SAP benchmarks, and I think our nearest competitors are, sometimes 2 and 3 rungs below us, and that's been consistent over the last number of years. So it's proof to the point that, you know, getting the right blend of partnership and the right technologies together are extraordinarily important. As we start to get a little more complex and we start to look at, you know, moving away from just the ERP type of ecosystem out into where some of the data is being born in the unstructured area. So looking down into sensors, into, you know, the world of IoT and what SAP are bringing to that, I guess, from their Leonardo frameworks and whatnot. That's a really, really interesting world to look at in terms, again, of SAP and what Dell EMC and SUSE are doing in that space. So I think the technologies and the collaboration and the reference architecture that we're working with, that we built and that we're continuing to develop on the CAS platform is extraordinarily important and extraordinarily valuable. Another thing that comes to mind, I think, Thomas, is some of the stuff that we're doing, again, with SAP with their Data Hub platform. So when we're looking into, you know, extracting data from those, you know, from these disparate environments, which are predominantly sitting in that kind of IoT world, right? So we're looking at things like, I guess, anything from straightforward Excel right into, you know, Hadoop environments, HDFS, Oracle, you know, and SAP environments, and extracting the data up out of those environments and being able to do so efficiently and quickly and with a level of stability. The types of architectures and technology and innovation that we're bringing to enable organizations to do that is pretty awesome in my view.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's key for our customers, that whatever we deliver them with to solve their problems and solutions better, faster, and cheaper as well, is that all of that is nicely integrated. So you're just as fast as your weakest link in the chain, whether it's the hardware, the software, and the benefit that we bring by working together is making sure that we optimize all modules, all part of the stacks for performances, for stability, for security, and for interoperability as well. You mentioned data and data hub, analytics, and all of that. And, you know, data is exploding and it keeps on growing and growing. And not only in public cloud or in data centers, but also at the edge. You mentioned some of the IoT use cases. So what are we doing together in that space, and what kind of problems can we solve together in such setups?
Yeah, okay. So absolutely great question, Thomas. So if we look at coding, right? I know that our global CTO John Rose talks around, you know, we got to figure out how we can code closer to the data. And if we're going to try and code closer to the data, we've got a number of different things that we need to keep in mind, right? So we've got developers who need to look at their CI/CD pipelines, figure out how they actually can, you know, start their development process, how they can take their development process, the software development process, and make it quicker and more efficient. They also need to figure out how they can take the coding as close to the data source as they possibly can. So we're into taking their manifest as close, you know, using, say, for example, container technology is a good way to take that effort, if you will, close to the data source. So as we start to extract data from these different sources, you know, as we start to look at creating value and then streaming and pipelining that value into their CI/CD pipelines, we need the right level of compute architecture, the right level of cloud native architecture, and the right level of orchestration to support that in there. So we're seeing the explosion not only of data right now, but, you know, the explosion and the increased call and need for orchestration at the cloud native layer. And this is where, again, I think we're doing, you know, a real amount as a partnership in order to wrap value, stability, and speed into that process. So if you look at what you guys are doing with your micro OS and taking that into that environment, your configuration builds linked into Salt, for example, will bring that level of consistency and that level of stability. And then as we try to grow that environment, because it's distributed by nature, you know, and scaling is extraordinarily important. You're adding a node. So there's a level of consistency, and the node is just being added to the environment, and it's nearly organically growing. So there's stability, there's speed, And then there is that partnership between the two organizations, Dell Tech and SUSE, bring that value to SAP Data Hub.
Yeah, and you mentioned our partnership in the container space or at the infrastructure level. We're also doing great together in the for the developers. So I've been working a lot, and SUSE has been working a lot with Dell and John in the Cloud Foundry Foundation, for instance, to bring the developer experience closer to the infrastructure and to provide business benefits to the companies when they adopt and those kind of technologies. Actually, I have a side question about that, and because I mean we're collaborating very strongly together. We're also collaborating inside open source foundations and projects with other companies, and with a strong link between what Dell EMC and SUSE are doing there. What is your view about the open source directions, where it's going, and how it can solve and help customers out there to simplify, modernize, and accelerate their IT and their business?
I'm really glad you asked that. It's something that's pretty close to my own heart. So SUSE are absolutely well and truly established and known all over the industry, all over the world for the work that they've done in the open source communities. I'd like to think as CTO for Dell Tech that we're also seen in that regard. You know, the reality is that we're seen as an essential infrastructure company that provides essential infrastructure, at least the Dell EMC part of that is, to organizations. What's lesser known is a lot of the work, as you've rightly called out, that we've done in the open source communities as well. So nearly every piece of engineering that we built back in the EMC days, we would have looked to spin off a derivative of that and upload that into the, or spin it out, at least out into the open community. So a lot of what you would have seen from the development phases of an EMC project probably would have ended up somewhere like GitHub, where you could actually download that. And, when we look to today and what we're doing from a Dell Tech perspective, we're trying to look at how we take proprietary technology and how we look at open source technology and take those two worlds together and blend them together. So it's extraordinarily important for us to examine in the office of the CTO, for example, within Dell EMC, how we handle that, how we take traditional technology, how we take emerging technology, how we take proprietary, and how we take open source, and bring these worlds together and have this confluence of magic, I guess, happen, so we can not just look to what we've done in the past over the last 10, 15, or 20 years, but look out into the future and how we can actually merge and blend, you know, emerging tech, new tech, and traditional tech with open source and proprietary technologies. It's essential. And we're building architectures all of the time now with that blend.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because the reality is that enterprises, companies, they have made investments in the past. They are using different services, different technologies, different hardware, different software. And the reality is that accommodating all of that is the best way to serve and help our customers being successful. Now, let me ask you one question. I was really looking forward to meeting with you in Dublin, because I know you know the place, and I was hoping that you could bring me to some interesting places in the city. We cannot do that for obvious reasons. And my question is the following. So as we live in uncertain, like challenging times for everybody, how do you think companies like SUSE and Dell can help partners and customers and also the society during those times? What's your view on that?
Well, first and foremost, I too am very saddened that I couldn't take you to all of these places that you wanted to go in Dublin. So, but you know, we're safe, we're well, and that's important to SUSE. It's important to Dell Tech that, you know, we look after ourselves and we look after, you know, the people in our organizations. When I look to the organization itself and I look to the potential of the partnership to take things to this pandemic, this new world that we're living in, we're doing a lot. So one of the first things that comes to mind is, you know, SUSE and Dell Tech play extraordinarily heavily in the HPC spaces. And my background is HPC, and one of the pride points, I guess, for Dell Tech is that we're sitting, you know, in the top 50 HPC on the HPC platforms worldwide, supercomputer platforms worldwide. We're actually, I think, number 5 as far as I know. So those platforms are sitting all across the world. One of the biggest platforms, the number 5 platform, which is sitting beside our Xenon HPC compute cluster in Austin, Texas. A large component of that is powered by SUSE. So what we're doing to try and look at value that we can bring to this pandemic that we're in, and trying to look at patterns and models to address those patterns in the development of COVID-19, but also looking at how we can better treatment for people who are suffering, with the disease at the moment. So that's one area that we're doing a lot. On a more consumer level, what we're trying to do is build, again, models, but models of a different type. We're trying to build financial models and develop the architectures, some of which we spoke today. And so a lot of the technologies that we've spoken about today, we've come together, we've collaborated, we've built reference architectures. And what we're doing, or what we're trying to do, is build a financial model around that, where we can land those technologies and land these capabilities into organizations and essential organizations who are battling, day to day against COVID, organizations who are battling day to day just to stay, to stay relevant and to stay alive. And with the right financial models in behind us. Dell Tech have a bank, which is kind of helpful when we're trying to build these sort of models. But when we can do this, we can bring, near or even zero level finance packages to these organizations. So they don't need to worry about how do we pay to get these architectures built out, up and running really, really quickly. We can work with our customers, work with our partners to build these financial models that are going to suit their organizations and let them get these architectures up and running so they can deal with these complex problems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There are so many angles where we can help fight that pandemic, right? So you mentioned high-performance computing plays a key role in the research. Financial aspects are key as well, and working with consumers and communities, local communities, global communities. Very excited to see what Dell is doing there. Marc, thank you so much for sharing all this insight with us and all this information and update from you. Thanks for your time. And any final words before we wrap up from you?
No, next time you're in Dublin, Thomas, hopefully I'll be able to shake your hand and have a pint of Guinness with you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for hosting me, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you for joining, Marc. Thank you for listening and watching, everyone. Stay safe.